Here is the voice of the working class, Rick Smith.
And welcome, brothers, sisters, working class heroes. This is the Rick Smith Show. Thanks so much for being here today on the big program. Lots to get to, lots to talk about. Glaring headline, glaring, bold headline. Film Academy condemns Will Smith. That's right. The Academy of Motion Pictures, Arts, and Sciences condemns Will Smith's slapping of Chris Rock at the Oscars. Says it's exploring further consequences. It condemns it in the strongest way possible with language. Bad. How brave of them. How courageous. Honestly, I didn't want to start with this because I don't really care. I didn't watch the Oscars. It's not my thing. But it has gotten so much attention. It is literally everywhere. Everyone has to have a point of view. Everyone has to have an opinion. Everyone has to have a take. Got to have your hot take. And I've got a couple. One, why did Will Smith get to go home? The first part of it is what privilege? We talk about privilege in this society. The privilege is you get to march up on a stage, slap somebody on national television, and then go back to your seat and yell obscenities. That's privilege. Because I'll tell you, if you did that, you would get a shiny set of bracelets. Now, if it were, Will Smith were to come and slap me, then I'd be rich, because that would be my retirement. Or we would be rolling around in the dirt. Now, do I understand a man standing up for his woman? Absolutely, I most certainly do. Maybe Ted Cruz could take a lesson. Maybe tomorrow in the Senate, Ted Cruz is going to try and slap an 80-year-old senator. Who knows? I'm sure he would swing and miss, but he may try. But hey, I get the you're going to stand by your woman thing. I get that. But you know what a real man does? He meets Chris afterwards. Didn't need the big production. Didn't need that. And I think Howard Stern is right. Had that been The Rock, Dwayne Johnson, that wouldn't have happened. Had that been someone else who would have slapped him back, I think that goes a little different. So I think a bit of bullying there. So that's my take on it. My first take on it is first, he got to go home. That doesn't happen. Doesn't happen to you and me. Doesn't happen to working people. That doesn't happen to average everyday people. That tells me that he's in the club. There's the big club, and you and I, we ain't in the big club. He's wealthy enough and powerful enough to be able to get away with literally slapping someone on television and going back to his seat, finishing his meal, and being able to go home at the end of the night. And probably not going to be any repercussion down the road. I'm sure the Academy will have a harshly worded statement coming because they're brave. Remember, they condemn this in the harshest way possible. But here at the end of it, do you know who cares less about this than I do? No one. So that's the end of it. I'm done with that. I don't care if Will Smith is a Scientologist. Tired of hearing about that. I don't care. I wish we would spend that kind of time and energy that I saw all over Twitter and social media. I wish we would spend that kind of energy on talking about how we feed hungry children, how we find homes for homeless veterans, how we, solve the problems that we really do have. And as a country, we really do have some major problems. Will Smith, really not one of them. Let him be who he... And I didn't see the movie. I don't know King Lear, was it? King Howard? Didn't see it. I thought his apology was pretty lame. I was in character. I guess that was the argument. He was the daughter, the two tennis players' father, I guess, and he was protective, and this was, I'm not buying it. Not at all. So there you go. Yeah, I've already said enough. Already said enough. Interesting bit coming out of the Russia war. Evidently, and this is the funny part, because remember, the justification for going into Ukraine was got to get rid of the Nazis. Evidently, according to the Financial Times, a newspaper that I actually believe does real journalism, they are saying that Russia is no longer requesting Ukraine denazify because, well, it's not that big of a deal. Does everyone have a Nazi problem? Yeah, we've got one here. We've got a couple here. Are they a problem? They're a pest. I don't know, a problem. They're a pest. I don't know that they're worth going and blowing up major cities, and I don't know that they're worth killing thousands of people and displacing millions. And this is interesting because it's now not even part of the negotiations anymore. But I thought it was the central tenet. I thought it was the reason. I thought it was why it had to happen. Had to get the Nazis. Had to get the Nazis because Ukraine was evidently, according to what we were told at the beginning, nothing but Nazis. Now, interestingly enough, America wants Joe Biden to be tougher on Russia. The latest poll, the latest AP NORC poll out, finds 56% of us believe Joe Biden needs to be tougher. He's not being tough enough, while 55% say they believe U.S. should sanction Russia as effectively as possible, even if it hurts the U.S. economy, which I find interesting. Means we're willing to sacrifice a little bit. That's a good thing. Until we sacrifice, and then we're going to go, Joe Biden did this. You see how that works? But I find interesting over the weekend, Joe Biden did make a little gaffe, a little slip, a little bit. And I don't even think it was really a gaffe so much as it's one of those things where you go, yeah, I don't think he can remain in power. I don't think Putin can stay in power after this. I think at some point, gotta go. And that's something hopefully the Russian people will go, yeah, you got to go. Hopefully that happens. But the president came out and he said, look, there was a moment of moral outrage. He said what he said, and he isn't walking it back. So all these people going, well, it makes him look weak because, he said it and then he walked it back. He didn't walk it back. There wasn't any of that. At least not that I saw. He said, look, I said what I said. I make no apologies. Make no apologies for calling for Putin's removal, he says, expressing moral outrage. Not new policy. Biden said people like this shouldn't be ruling countries, but they do. It doesn't mean I can't express my outrage about it. And I agree with him. Now, the outrage machine on the right, boy, they just couldn't wait to pounce on this. Look how weak he looks. He's backpedaling on this. No, I think the fact that he came out and he said it, I think is okay. I would have stuck with it. I would have left it. I don't know that I would have come back and gone over it, but it is what it is. I think Biden has done a good job to this point. Could he do more? I think so. I would have liked to have seen more stuff, just more armaments. I would have liked to have seen more public display, but I understand why not. Now, the other big story today. This is the one that, again, not getting as much publicity as the slap heard round the world. Can you believe that? Oh my gosh. Wow. Evidently, I'm sorry. I can't get over how ridiculous we can be sometimes. That is what dominated all day. It's all I've heard about from everyone. Did you see the slap? It was a slap. For a guy who played Muhammad Ali in the movie, that was the best he could come up with? I mean, seriously, it could have at least been a backhand. Kind of masculine, kind of something. For a guy as jacked as Will Smith, at least if you're going to... I got to stop. Because I'm just going to lose my mind over it, because just so much effort into it, so much time and energy and ridiculousness. My email, never mind. Can you tell that I'm a little frustrated by the fact that we've wasted so much energy on nothing, and our priorities seem to be in the wrong direction? And we'll probably spend weeks, going over this. Was the apology good enough? Because Will Smith came out and apologized. Is it enough? Yeah, it's called spin control. He'll apologize without actually apologizing, because that's usually how this stuff goes. All right. John Eastman, one of Trump's lawyers, and the former guy, according to U.S. District Judge David Carter, likely committed multiple felonies and multiple federal crimes in their attempt to remain in power. Now, this is, again, nothing new. We've talked about this before, something that we've known for a while. You just now have a U.S. District Judge writing this in his 44-page decision to allow the January 6th Commission to get some of the quote-unquote communication, the privileged communication between Trump and his lawyer. Now, what's interesting is they tried to say, well, attorney-client privilege, this is privilege because, when there's a crime going on, when you're criming, when you're breaking the law, you don't get to conspire with your attorney and then have it covered up. It's generally not how that works. I think that's, kind of what the judge here is saying. You don't get to crime and have it covered up by a judge. Now, what Judge Carter said was the illegality of the plan was obvious. He said our nation was founded on the peaceful transition of power, epitomized by George Washington laying down his sword to make way for democratic elections. Ignoring this history, President Trump vigorously campaigned for the vice president to single-handedly determine the results of the 2020 election. Now, in his view, two major felonies probably were committed. Obstruction of an official proceeding, fairly serious charge, pretty big one, one that's been brought against probably a couple hundred of the Capitol rioters, and conspiracy to defraud the United States, another pretty big one. Now, will Trump see these charges? Probably not. His decision was not on criminal charges, had none of that. But let me throw in, because, I'm someone who still believes Trump's never going to see the inside of a courtroom. He's never going to see the inside of a jail. He's not going to be held accountable, because it's just not what we do. But for those who want some hope, for those who need a little bit of hope in this kind of moment, I haven't heard a thing, not a whisper, out of Merrick Garland. The DOJ has been quiet as church mice. Nothing. Now, you remember during the former guy's term, the DOJ was like a sieve. They couldn't keep a secret. They couldn't keep, they couldn't keep a gossip column secret. These tight-lipped folks now kind of making me wonder, possible. Now, I go back to the January 6th Commission. What do they do with this information? Because this stuff supposedly lays it all out. There's 101 records that the congressional investigators are going to get that supposedly, lays out, Eastman's, moving towards the Electoral Count Act and all of the scheming that they were doing. You've seen the 2-page memo. You've seen all of this stuff. How does this play out? And do we eventually get to the primetime hearings? When do they start making this case? That's what I'm waiting for. Now this week, Jared Kushner is supposed to testify before the Select Committee. Going to see how that goes. Also, Ginny Thomas is Clarence Thomas's wife, may be requested to come in as well. I think that's important. So lots coming up. Lots of important stuff that I think could turn some heads. At least I hope so. I'd love to hear your thoughts. You can email me, rick@thericksmithshow.com, or give us a call, 1-866-416-RICK, 1-866-416-7425. If you're going to call about the slap, don't. I don't want to hear about the slap. Or if you do, you got to have a good point if you want it. 1-866-416-RICK, 1-866-416-7425. Quick break, right back after this. Stick around. You're listening to The Rick Smith Show. We're working people. Come to talk. If you're a fan of the show, you've heard our labor history in 2 segments, and you can hear them on the radio pretty much anywhere in the U.S. Labor history has never been more important than it is right now. So here's what we'd like you to do. Tell a teacher. Tell a teacher that labor history is important and that they can get digestible 2-minute lessons that are absolutely free. Free to download, free to use, free to share. Tell a teacher to go to thericksmithshow.com/history and help us put labor back where it belongs, in the classroom. You know, generations of American workers fought, bled, and died to build the American way of life. It's our job to keep their stories alive. Go tell a teacher that we're here to help them do just that. Find us at thericksmithshow.com/history today.
Welcome back to The Rick Smith Show. Now, here is Rick Smith.
So the great state of Mississippi. Evidently, Mississippi wants to be the poorest state in the country. Because over the weekend, what they did is they went and passed what is being called the largest tax cut ever passed in the state of Mississippi's history. The largest. Because, hey, rich people need more money. Because who needs schools and hospitals in a state that already has one of the poorest funding methods for your schools and your hospitals? And never mind those roads. You got dirt roads. Those are fine. They're just going to be messed up by hurricanes and stuff like that anyway. Who needs state investment when you can depend on the federal government? I mean, that's the only thing I can come up with is what it is. They're getting money from the federal government, so hey, let's slash and burn the state tax base. Now the claim is, and this is where the thought process, think about it. The thought process goes like this: they're losing population, so it's one of the states that for some reason people keep leaving. I don't know, maybe crummy schools and bad infrastructure, hospitals and stuff like that, maybe not a reason people want to flock to your state, kind of thinking. Look, I've been to Birmingham. I love the people there. I love Birmingham. Had a wonderful time there. But you get out into some of the other places and it's questionable. And needing of investment. And taking, what little resource you had and going, here, you have some. No, you have some. No, we'll make sure that the well-to-do continue to do well-to-do. And not investing in your state. Because what you're doing is you're taking away the money that you would use to invest. Is that going to really attract people to the state? Will this pay off? Now, we've seen these movies before. We've seen this, tax cuts it's gonna create jobs. It's going to spur economic development. It's going to do all these wonderful things. It's going to create manna from heaven. And it never seems to work out the way that they sell it to us. It never seems to work out the way it's pitched. And all it really does is what it's always done. Makes folks who have resources better off, and those without resources worse off. It makes inequality worse, and the alligator jaws of inequality get wider and wider and wider, and you have that two Americas. This is not rocket science. This doesn't take a genius to figure out. And especially in a state like Mississippi that's a no rights at work state, you have real problems. So I look at this, and I just realized Birmingham is in Alabama, not in Mississippi. Did I say Birmingham? Because I was thinking about my friends in Birmingham. I was thinking actually Jackson. Jackson is a beautiful place. But I'm thinking about, the kind of investment that state needs, and what's gone on there. And the sad reality is this kind of model has failed almost for working people. Now, again, this is supposed to make the wealthier wealthy. This is supposed to be that dividing, the worthy. This is supposed to benefit, who it's supposed to benefit. And average everyday working people, this is not supposed to be helpful. Now they're going to sell it as, well, we want folks who are going to, the working people. But it's not how that goes. It's not how it works. And sadly, we're in this weird kind of moment where it just doesn't go. I got 1 minute. Let's get Julie on the line. I got 1 minute, Julie. What's on your mind?
Well, I just want to inform you, Rick, because maybe you weren't aware of it, but the whole slap thing was actually the fault of the Democrats. Because after it happened, I put in the question to my phone, has Will Smith ever assaulted anyone before? And right away, some guy with a far-right show said, there go the Democrats again. And
that's great.
They were blaming it on the I couldn't believe it. And then I asked a little more serious question. I wanted to know if he had mental health issues. And it did refer me back to some interviews that he did where Will Smith did admit that he was talking about having suicidal thoughts, and so did his wife, and some drug problems some time ago. But I thought that was really priceless to right away blame it on the Democrats.
I wish I would have thought of that. It's Hillary's fault. Darn it. How did I not think of that?
Well, it was in the basement of that pizza place, with the abusing. I guess by the way, Rick, did you know that there's 310 GOPers that have been accused and some found guilty of child abuse? Are you aware of that?
Yes.
Child sexual crimes?
Yeah. It's sad.
Yeah.
Sad
well,
stuff.
Anyway, thanks for listening. I just wanted to let you know that it's really the Democrats' fault.
I appreciate it. Now I'm informed. Thank you, Julie. Great stuff. I wish I had thought of that. Wow. Quick break. Right back after this. Stick around. You're listening to The Rick Smith Show. I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2. On this day in labor history, the year was 1979. That was the day the 3 Mile Island Unit 2 reactor partially melted down near Middletown, Pennsylvania. A combination of equipment failure and human error has long been attributed as the cause of the meltdown. An initial overheating and reactor shutdown had occurred, but a pressure valve remained stuck open, allowing coolant to escape. Design flaws in control equipment failed to indicate the position of the valve. Workers then mistook the increased pressure as a result of the excess coolant. They shut off the emergency water system that could have cooled the core. Fears of radiation release and hydrogen bubbles led to voluntary evacuations that included over 140,000 residents. Authorities assured the public that the partial meltdown had been contained. President Carter convened a commission to investigate the causes. It concluded that while the operators took inappropriate actions, the training they received was inadequate, as were the procedures they were required to follow. Plant designers Babcock and Wilcox were held responsible for poor design. The company failed to notify operators of repeated valve failure and a previous near duplicate of the potential catastrophe at the Davis-Besse plant. Metropolitan Edison, General Public Utilities, and the NRC were also held responsible for poor quality control, poor maintenance, communication lapses, and poor training. Fears regarding public health and safety intensified, fueling health studies of those exposed and the anti-nuclear power movement. The aftermath brought about sweeping changes involving emergency response planning, reactor operator training, human factors, engineering, radiation protection, and many other areas of nuclear plant power operations. It also caused the NRC to tighten and heighten its regulatory oversight. All of these changes significantly enhanced U.S. reactor safety. Labor History in 2 brought to you by the Illinois Labor History Society and The Rick Smith Show.
Keep On Trucking was an iconic underground cartoon created in 1968 by comic master Robert Crumb. Featuring various big-footed men strutting jauntily through life, the caricature became widely popular as an expression of young people's collective optimism. "You're moving on down the line," Crumb later explained. "It's proletarian, it's populist." But today, the phrase has become ironic, for America's truck drivers themselves are no longer moving on down the line of fairness, justice, and opportunity. What had been a skilled middle-class job in the 1960s is now largely a skilled poverty wage job, thanks to the industry's relentless push for deregulation and deunionization, decoupling drivers from upward mobility. Trucking has been turned into a corporate racket, with CEOs arbitrarily abusing the workers who move their products across town and country. To enable the abuse, corporate lawyers have fabricated a legal dodge, letting shippers claim that their truck drivers are not their employees but independent contractors. Thus, hocus pocus, drivers don't get decent wages, overtime pay, workers' comp, Social Security, health care, rest breaks, reimbursement for truck expenses, including gasoline, tires, repair, and insurance, and, as contractors, drivers are not allowed to unionize. This rank ripoff has become the industry standard, practiced by multi-billion-dollar shipping giants like XPO, FedEx, Penske, and Amazon. This is Jim Hightower saying, of course, corporate bosses try to hide their greed with a thin, legalistic fig leaf. Quote, "We believe our driver classifications are legal," sniffed an XPO executive. Sure they are, sport, since your lobbyists write the laws. But might does not make right. Legal does not mean moral, and boss, spelled backwards, is double S-O-B.
Welcome back to the Rick Smith Show. Now, here is Rick Smith.
So I've been following this Ginny Thomas thing, and over the weekend I was thinking about it. Had this been a Democrat, can you imagine the right-wing outrage factory and their chaos merchants non-stop pounding the drum here? I mean, can you imagine? Just think for a second. Let's say it was Hillary. Oh, let's just say. Can you imagine the outrage machine of Fox News, right-wing talk radio, all the cable, all of the online, all of that stuff, just in unison, all on message, all of the think tanks, all the state policy networks, everything, the whole machine, the whole outrage factory, all marching in lockstep on message. Can you imagine? It would be everywhere. And yet, what was today? It was the slap. That's all we heard today. Didn't hear much about Ginny Thomas, but it was the slap. In fact, it wasn't even the second story because, well, Trump and his probably committed 2 felonies. That got the second spot. Because, hey, the slap. At least there was a little bit of of coverage of Ginny Thomas, and that's why I've asked my good friend Will Bunch to come give us some thoughts. He's got an article out on Ginny and the Supreme Court. His most recent op-ed, his most recent column, the Supreme Court has a giant legitimacy crisis, which means so does America. That's why I've asked Will Bunch to come give us some thoughts. He is a daily columnist over at the Philly Inquirer. Will, thanks for taking time for us.
Hey, Rick, thanks for having me back. I appreciate it.
So, not even, am I wrong? Do you think had this been a Democrat, had this been, Sonia Sotomayor's husband or one of the other, would this not be the outrage of the day instead of just some secondary story that maybe someone thought of?
Yeah, I mean the Republican judicial outrage machine is a well-oiled machine, right? I mean, it's been up and running for years, and it's got so many different, it's like a multinational corporation. It's got different departments now, right? It's got the the confirmation department, and you've got Mitch McConnell doing whatever it takes to ram through his justices onto the court, whether it's denying Obama that seat in 2016 or racing to get Amy Coney Barrett on the court in a matter of a few weeks. So there's that wing of it, and and you saw the Ketanji Brown Jackson confirmation hearings. I mean, you saw the levels they were willing to take it to try and take this woman down and sully her name. They play no holds barred, hardball, whatever you want to call it, to keep their edge in the judiciary. And not just the Supreme Court, but definitely at the Supreme Court. So yeah, so if there had been a chance for them to take out a Democratic justice and figure out some way to leverage a seat for themselves, even though they don't have any of the levers of government right now, but they would, try and get the Democrat out of there and try and keep the seat open for 3 years until the Trump restoration, or that's just the way they play,
No.
And that's part of this legitimacy crisis, what they've been willing to do to politicize the court to bend it to their will.
Yeah, I mean, I look at this and again, the fact that the strongest reaction that the Democrats could come up with, Clarence Thomas should recuse himself from cases on January 6th. I'm going, really? That's the strongest language you could come up with?
Yeah, I mean, look, there should be an impeachment investigation, right? I mean, investigation. We don't. It's true. We don't know all the facts. I mean, to me, the biggest hole, and it's going to be, if there were to be an investigation, which I'm not confident there will be, but if there were a real investigation of this, the big hole is trying to prove how hard Ginny actually lobbied her husband. I mean, which is, pillow talk, right? It's kind of hard to get it. It's hard to get at that stuff. So, but I look at this and I think of the famous scene in All the President's Men with Woodward and Bernstein talking about when you go to bed at night and it's all clear and you wake up in the morning and there's a few inches of snow on the ground. You didn't see it snow, but it snowed because there's snow on the ground. When you look at the fact that Clarence Thomas is not only voting on, ruling on cases around January 6th. I mean, he was the only dissenting vote when it came up to the court about turning over Trump's records, records that for all they know could include stuff about Ginny Thomas, right? So to me, that's the 6 inches of snow on the ground. The fact that he wouldn't recruit, true, we can't prove that he and his wife discussed January 6th or the whole matter, but his ruling is suspicious as heck. And he should have recused himself. I mean, the standard for when and how Supreme Court justices recuse themselves in cases is so ridiculously, it's basically non-existent. It's not even, I was going to say it's light, but it barely exists really. So and the bottom line is the public has understandably lost faith in the Supreme Court. I mean, you can see it in the polling numbers. Last fall, the Gallup poll found the lowest number of trust, the lowest percentage of trust in the Supreme Court it's ever recorded. And this is why, and this was even before the Ginny Thomas stuff came out. It's their handling of cases like the abortion case. People, even though it's kind of a legal insider baseball thing, but people are starting to understand about this whole shadow docket, which is basically a procedure where they use these emergency orders where they don't have the court hearings, they don't have the deliberations. You don't even know the votes sometimes. They just issue this written order on an emergency basis to settle many more cases than's ever been done before. And it's just led to this significant loss of trust, and if you don't trust the Supreme Court, you don't have much of a democracy. I mean, read a book like How Democracy Dies by these two Harvard political scientists, Ziblatt and the other guy authored in a minute, Levitsky and Ziblatt. It's a great book, and in all these countries they've studied around the world where democracy is eroded, the Supreme Court is just a key pivot point, and we're losing the Supreme Court, and it's scary.
Yeah, but what ends up happening is you get into this. Well, you did this and you did this, and conservatives go back. Well, Bork, you Robert Bork, and then everyone devolves into this finger pointing. And what I find interesting is, and I have a lot of these conversations with conservatives, is you'll start back and forth, and you both agree on the problem. The problem, you both agree on it. It's you get hung up on, well, who you blame instead of fixing the problem. Everyone seems to be stuck on, well, you're at fault. No, you're at fault. How about we fix the problem instead? And that seems to me to be the place to start, maybe.
Yeah, I mean, one place. There's been a lot of talk about expanding the court. I don't know how realistic that is, although, as people have pointed out, the court is clearly overburdened in terms of its workload, and which gives you kind of a nonpartisan justification for perhaps expanding the court. But in reality, it would be seen as highly partisan if the Democrats do it, and that'll be, and people will think that is politicizing the court even more instead of depoliticizing it, which is what they'd like to see. I think one thing that could depoliticize the court, though, would be term limits instead of lifetime appointments for justices. If nothing else, the stakes over a lifetime appointment, it just becomes these life or death battles, because that if you lose, if you can't keep, Kavanaugh off the Supreme Court, he's going to be there for 40 years, right? And that just makes people fight harder. It might be a little bit different if you knew he was only going to be on there for 5 years or 10 years or whatever, and you had a more rotating cast of judges. There are definitely ways you could start to slowly rebuild trust in the court. Clearly a stronger code of ethics, so you wouldn't have situations like this Clarence and Ginny Thomas situation.
Yeah, because I got to tell you,
they don't have that now.
Yeah, I look at John Roberts and I wonder what his legacy is going to be. I look at this court and I wonder what the Roberts legacy is going to be.
Yeah.
With all of the chaos and the fact that this is a corporate court. There's a lot of talk of it's a conservative court, it's a theocratic court. No, this is a corporate court. Overwhelmingly, they side with corporate interests more than anything. And I think that is a big problem. But on the hot button social issues, they're also on the in my view, on the minority side of things.
Yeah, no, I think that's exactly right, Rick. I think what's interesting about the Roberts Court is, he was always, like you said, a pro-corporate guy first and foremost. And I think in the early years, I guess he became justice when about 2005, 2006. Maybe in those first 10 years, you had a situation on the court where they really focused on their work in helping corporations, and sometimes it was a high-profile case like Citizens United and big money in politics. A lot of times it was smaller stuff about unions and workers' rights that didn't get the attention that it should have gotten, but they had that But that was always kind of mitigated, I think, in those early years by the fact that the court didn't go crazy on the social issues. They legalized gay marriage. They held back from the most extreme positions they could have taken on abortion or affirmative action or issues like that. And in the last 5 years, now that we have what I call the Trump court, with those 3 Trump appointments on the bench, that restraint is gone. And so now here comes abortion, here comes affirmative action, and people are terrified. These are views that go against the strong majority, not just the majority, but a strong majority of the American public. 72% of the American public does not want the court to overturn Roe versus Wade. And yet the court is on the brink of overturning Roe versus Wade.
And I got to wonder how many people want Griswold overturned. And that came up last
week.
It
could be worse, right? Or, something that's of great interest to me is the, Sullivan versus the New York Times, the critical free speech case that involves, the right to basically publish articles criticizing public officials and have less concerns about being sued as long as the story is factually correct. I mean, Clarence Thomas and some of the other conservative justices on the court have hinted about overturning that. So there's a lot of havoc that could be wreaked in the next few years.
No, it's scary stuff. You're listening to the Rick Smith Show. We're here with Will Bunch. Will is a national columnist for the Philly Inquirer. You can check out the work that he does over at Inquirer.com. We'll get links out on social media. I can check that out. Also, if you got a thought, question, comment, something for Will, give us a call, 1-866-416-RICK, 1-866-416-7425. I wanted to get your thoughts on the confirmation last week of Ketanji Brown Jackson and some of the stuff that came out of it. I thought she did a great job. I know the outrage factory went crazy over she couldn't define a woman. It's simple. It's in the dictionary. I thought she did a great job. I thought I thought she was clear-headed. I thought she was good with the answers. I did find Ben Sass's response to be quite interesting. That she's brilliant mind. She's got a great story. She's exceptional person. All the effusive with praise, but I still can't vote for her.
Yeah, I mean it's kind of shocking. I mean this, and some of the listeners who've been around for a few years know this, but you can go back, was like 30 years ago or 35 years ago, and within a few years of each other, Ruth Bader Ginsburg was confirmed on it by a 96-3 vote, 96-3, and here's a woman, with strong opinions, some of them controversial about feminism and whatnot, and yet the majority of Republicans voted for her. Just a couple of years before that, Justice Scalia, who maybe the most conservative justice we've had in our lifetimes, or at least the most outspoken, high-profile one, was confirmed unanimously. Every Democrat voted for Antonin Scalia, and I'm not saying they should all be unanimous. They shouldn't, I guess, but you look at somebody like Ketanji Brown Jackson, and she seems like somebody who should be a 96-3, right? I mean, she's just overwhelmingly qualified, and in this Ben Sass thing, that 30 years ago, Ben Sass with that mindset would have voted to confirm her, but now he can't. Now he says he can't, and why? It's because they're so terrified of the wacko base of the Republican Party.
Yeah.
And you saw that in the questioning. So much of the questioning, like all this stuff around child pornography and whatnot, it was all clearly influenced on some level or another by QAnon, which ties everything full circle, right? Because Ginny Thomas, who we just were talking about in the first segment, her crazy texts to Mark Meadows, Trump's chief of staff, were also influenced by QAnon, and QAnon is crazy. It's this crazy theory of, this secret cabal and these wild sex rings involving Democrats and Hollywood stars, but no Republicans somehow.
And pizza joints but here's the weird thing, and this is the part that I keep coming back to. Ginny Thomas is somebody who's been in this world for a very long time. This to me is not news. She has been, in these groups and influential in this world for a very long time. It's not surprising to me whatsoever that she's this tuned into all of this stuff, because ultimately, and I said this a couple of days ago, the reason she's in the position that she's in, and she's got Mark Meadows' cell phone, and she's got all of these connections, is she's Clarence Thomas's wife. That's the reason. That's the connection. That's the power. That's what it is. And I got a ton of pushback. No, you're just being sexist. No, that's where the power is at. It's the court. It's that Supreme Court seat.
Yeah, I absolutely. And I think a couple things. I think we're what's the expression, defining deviancy down or whatever. It's the baseline in the Republican Party just keeps sinking lower and lower. And so even people who started out seeming as conservatives, but grounded conservatives or whatever you want to call it, not off the deep end, like a Ginny Thomas, these people are just getting immersed in this world, and U.S. senators are picking up on it. And, look, it's one thing to be involved in conservative causes, but Ginny Thomas was involved in an insurrection trying to prevent the peaceful transfer of power of the presidency in the United States. For all this country's flaws, and of course we did have that one incident in 1861, the Civil War, but basically beyond that, we've always had a peaceful transfer of power. Nobody said, oh my gosh, LBJ is never going to turn the White House over to Richard Nixon. It wasn't even something we thought about as a possibility. And now, not only did we witness this insurrection in 2021, 2020 and 2021, but we have this wave coming in 2024 of these new laws, these new Secretary of States that are going to be elected in some of these deeply Republican states who think the 2020 election was stolen. You're going to have all these laws that are going to give state legislators and legislatures in states like Georgia, power to override Democratic counties and their vote counting. It's just things we never thought would happen in this country.
It is going to be an interesting year, and look, it's just the precursor to what 2024 is going to be like, and that's why I am very, very concerned. But Will, I appreciate the time. Great stuff as always. Incredible work. Hope folks will take a look at it. We'll get links out on social media, Inquirer.com. Thanks so much, man.
Hey, thanks for having me. It was great. Thanks.
Good stuff. Our good friend Will Bunch. Again, make sure you check out the work that he does over at the Philly Inquirer, where he is a national columnist. Let's take a quick break. Right back with your thoughts. 1-866-416-RICK. 1-866-416-7425. This is The Rick Smith Show for working people at the dawn. I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2. On this day in labor history, the year was 1977. That was the day that members of AFSCME Local 1644 began their unsuccessful strike in Atlanta, Georgia. The union was made up of 1,300 mostly black sanitation workers. The city of Atlanta had elected its first black mayor, Maynard Jackson, in 1973. According to historian Manning Marabell, members of the sanitation union had campaigned aggressively to help Jackson become mayor. Many thought thought he would be sympathetic to the needs of working people in the city. The sanitation workers' hopes were disappointed when they received no raises for 3 consecutive years. Their average income was $7,500 annually. This put the workers below the city's poverty line. Since the Memphis sanitation workers' strike of 1968, AFSCME had emphasized organizing black workers in southern cities. Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. was assassinated while he was in Memphis supporting the strikers. As the nation mourned the death of the civil rights leader, the Memphis strikers had won their first contract. But the sanitation workers in Atlanta would not win their work action. On April 2nd, Mayor Jackson fired the striking workers. He aligned himself with what Manning Marabell has described as Atlanta's corporations, media, and the leaders of the Black Party's bourgeoisie. Some black leaders publicly criticized the workers for striking against the city's first black mayor, accusing them of undermining hard-won black political power. The city's black middle class, by and large, did not support the strike. After a month, the strike was effectively over. Workers returned to their jobs with no improvements in their wages, hours, or conditions. And the hard-learned lesson that what politicians say at election time is not always what they do once they get elected. Like what you hear? Check out laborhistoryin2.com.
You're listening to The Rick Smith Show, where working people come to talk.
Yeah, I got to tell you, as I said, if this were a Democrat, this would be the biggest story ever. The fact that she has been eyeball deep in all of these right-wing groups and look, just crazy into it. And this QAnon stuff is just out there. Let's go to the phone lines. Got Alice on line 1. Alice, how are you today?
I'm good. How are you?
I can't complain. What's on your mind?
Well, you were saying about QAnon and, of course, Ginny Thomas. But when I graduated from university back in 1985, and I've told you before, I have a degree in psychology and in sociology. But the average IQ in 1985 in the United States was 100 to 110, okay? And then 20 years ago, we dropped down, and the average IQ was 105 to 95. And I just read an article 2 days ago that the IQ in the United States has dropped down, with the average IQ being 97.
Wow.
Now, I don't know if my thoughts on this are the educational level, because we have all these people that are now doing the homeschooling and the religious schools and whatnot. And when it comes to IQ, a lot of that has to do with your cognitive skills, what you've been taught, how to think critically. And it's no wonder that we have all these people falling into this QAnon thing, because nobody has any critical thinking skills anymore.
That's an excellent point. No, you're not wrong there. And look, some of the people that I know that do the homeschooling, I don't want them training hamsters, let alone children. So what you're saying is probably spot on. Look, I just thought it was something in the water. Maybe it was the lead chips we ate as a kid, but it quite frankly, you're probably more spot on than I am.
Well, if you look, and it's also the subjects, if you look back to...
Yep, I gotta take a break here.
Okay.
Sorry, Alice.
Talk to you later.
Darn clock. Thanks, Alice. Appreciate it. But I don't think she's wrong. If you watch the movie Idiocracy, we're heading towards that every day, speeding toward it like a locomotive. Sad stuff. Quick break, right back. Stick around. You listen to The Rick Smith Show.
I thought we were going to die. We barely made it into the room. 5-10 more seconds, we would have been in the hallway, which is nothing.
Deadly tornadoes leave trail of destruction in New Orleans and Texas. Ukraine's nuclear agency warns forest fires around Chernobyl could release plumes of radiation. Plus, the Russian invasion of Ukraine is spurring Europe to abandon fossil fuels faster.
All of those stories and more straight ahead from BradBlog.com. I'm Brad Friedman.
And I'm Desi Doyen.
Stand by for 6 minutes of independent green news, politics, analysis, and snarky comment.
Take that, Putin. We're not going to buy our gas from a war criminal. We're going to buy it from the good guys, Saudi Arabia.
Yep, this is your Green News Report. Okay, Desi Doyen, climate change-related disaster after disaster after disaster in Louisiana and in Texas. It just seems to never end down there.
I know, sadly. Louisiana's Democratic Governor John Bel Edwards declared a state of emergency after at least 2 tornadoes left a trail of destruction in densely populated parts of New Orleans Tuesday night, including a powerful EF3 tornado that lifted homes off their foundations and killed at least one person. It was part of the same system that spawned dozens of tornadoes in Texas. The New Orleans tornadoes knocked out power to thousands just 7 months after Hurricane Ida heavily damaged the city's electric grid, and it's a region that has been pummeled repeatedly by multiple hurricanes over just the last 3 years.
It has, and you would think that in Texas and Louisiana, huge fossil fuel industry down there, they would start to get the picture after all of these hurricanes, these floods, these wildfires, and now these tornadoes. In
a site visit, Governor Bel Edwards warned residents that the death toll could rise.
Take a moment to remind people that in natural disasters, especially when you have power outages, a lot of times the biggest loss of life isn't from the storm itself, it's from the operation of generators. And so we ask people to please be safe. Make sure that generator is operated at a safe distance from your home, never in the home.
More than 600 buildings sustained damage, many of them homes still awaiting repairs after Hurricane Ida last fall. As far as the influence of climate change on this specific storm system, the data is somewhat mixed on tornadoes, but studies do show that tornadoes are getting more intense, more frequent, and more likely to come in swarms, including an increase in nighttime tornadoes because of rising overnight temperatures. In Ukraine, the country's nuclear agency reported this week that Russian troops occupying the Chernobyl nuclear site have looted and destroyed a state-of-the-art laboratory that was working to improve nuclear waste management and contained radioactive samples that are now, quote, in the hands of the enemy.
They stole radioactive samples?
Yes.
That doesn't seem smart.
This is true. The agency also warned that several forest fires are burning around the Chernobyl site that could release plumes of radiation trapped in trees and soil, but that the Russian military's occupation is obstructing efforts to put out those fires.
And if you burn a radioactive forest, doesn't that send radiation into the air all over the place, including into Russia?
Yes.
And a few days ago, the Ukrainian authorities said that they had lost the ability to monitor the radiation levels near Chernobyl. Is that monitoring still down at this time?
Yes, unfortunately, it is. As we go to air, President Biden is in Europe to push European leaders to take new steps to curb the continent's deep dependence on Russian oil and natural gas that indirectly fund Russia's war machine. Biden also urged U.S. companies operating critical infrastructure, including the energy sector, to harden their defenses against potential cyber attacks, citing new intelligence. And the Russian invasion of Ukraine is spurring Europe to abandon fossil fuels faster. European countries this week backed a proposal to impose the world's first carbon border tax. That's a tariff on imports from countries that don't cut their carbon emissions.
That's good.
Germany announced it will back a European Union proposal to phase out sales of internal combustion cars by 2035.
That's good, too.
One of the world's largest reinsurers, Swiss Re, announced it is halting all business in Russia and will stop insuring most oil and gas projects.
Also good.
The Netherlands announced it will significantly ramp up the building of offshore wind farms, doubling its planned capacity by 2030.
I like it.
France announced it will end subsidies for new residential gas heaters and boost electric heat pumps instead, and will stop import of Russian gas and oil by 2027.
What is going on? Are you okay, Desi Doyen?
And finally, laggard French oil and gas gas company Total announced this week that it would stop buying Russian oil by the end of the year and will halt new investment in projects there, just weeks after most other major oil companies cut ties with Russia.
Well, this is just too much good news for our listeners at once. For much more on all of these stories, check out our website at greennews.bradblog.com.
Are you tired of think tank approved corporate news and commentary? Are you tired of CEOs telling you what to think, who to hate, and who to vote for? Well, welcome to the Rick Smith Show. We don't take orders from some boardroom, and we don't do focus groups or talking points. We don't work for them, and we never will. I'm Rick Smith, and I work for you. Join us daily at thericksmithshow.com and download the podcast and never miss a minute.
Welcome back to the Rick Smith Show. Now, here is Rick Smith.
So today, President Biden unfurled the big budget. And look, I've always said budgets are moral documents, shows your priorities. Of the $5.8 trillion budget request for 2023, an increase in discretionary spending of about 7.4%. Pretty sizable bump, about 9.5% of that for non-defense discretionary spending, 4% for defense spending. And look, there's tons of stuff that a little bump here, a little bump there. For me, the thing I looked for the first time in, I guess, 8 years, there's going to be an increase in the budget for the National Labor Relations Board. It's just a little bump of about, I guess it's like $30 million or something like that. Going to take them up to $319.4 million to help workers to organize and to make sure that, employers don't completely steamroll people when they try to organize. I think that budget should have been tripled, but just where we are in this moment. But here to talk about the budget proposal and what the chances are of it actually becoming law, I've asked Amy Hanauer to come talk with us. Amy is the executive director of the Institute on Taxation and Economic Policy, ITEP, itep.org, their website. Amy, thanks for taking time for us.
Yeah, great to talk to you, Rick.
So the big budget unfurled. I got to tell you, I don't remember the last time a budget actually passed. I know we talk about these every year, that we come out with a budget, lots of priorities, lots of really great stuff, and there's lots of good stuff in here. But I actually don't remember the last time we as a government passed a budget.
Yeah, well, look, I think you're right. This is something that lays out what the president wants to see done, and he's said a lot of good things out there, and so the question is, where are lawmakers going to take this, and how are we going to get to some of the real goals that he's setting forth here?
Yeah. Now the big one obviously is the fact that the president said, "Hey, rich people, we're in a moment. You've done really well. That little pandemic thing, you did wildly well. In fact, you did too well. In fact, you need to kick a little bit back in to help everybody else." He's talking about, something is, what was it, a 20% minimum tax rate on incomes over $100 million. I don't know how anyone possibly could be against that.
Yeah, no, look, working people, teachers, nurses, firefighters, they pay their taxes every year. And the wealthiest people in the country often don't pay taxes on all or most of their income. And, so the proposal that the president put forth would do a lot to address that. And I think it's long overdue. It should happen because the rest of us pay taxes when we work, and the wealthiest people ought to pay their share as well.
Now, personally,
they benefit the most. They benefit the most from our economy and from all of the services that we provide. They ought to chip in.
Absolutely. Personally, I'm someone who believes we go back to the good socialist president Dwight Eisenhower's tax code, where we wouldn't be going, "Oh, please, hat in hand, can we have a little bit to help fund the children?" No, you back then you had a 92% top marginal tax rate. You grabbed it and you funded the things that needed to be done, and we built major things like an interstate highway system. We invested in education and health care and fought wars, paid our bills, didn't run up massive debt, and again, fought our wars and paid for them. Can't do that today.
Yeah, look, there are so many things that this country needs, from healthcare to education. It's incredibly hard for a working class kid to make it through college today. You used to be able that with your Pell Grant and your minimum wage job over the summer, you could afford a year of college. That's not the case anymore. We've got incredible infrastructure needs in this country, and we've got a need for more good jobs. And if you pass a budget that really taxes the wealthy, taxes corporations to pay for these things, you could create a lot of jobs, you could make people's lives easier, and you could enable people to kind of, join the middle class. Yeah.
Now, there's a difference in thought and philosophy. And I thought this is something we could talk about a little bit. There's the Mississippi model. Because I just talked about this a little bit. Mississippi, one of the poorest states in the country, actually, before the 2020 census, was losing population because people are fleeing the state. They just enacted the largest tax cut in their state's history, a state that is already struggling with education, struggling with healthcare, struggling with all kinds of things. So, hey, let's make it worse by basically gutting our ability to invest in our future. There's that model, and then there's the model of me, the tax and spend liberal, says, hey, let's raise taxes and invest in things like Biden's budget proposal to spend $50 billion to build housing, affordable housing in communities that actually need it, so that families can buy starter homes and begin families and all of that stuff. There's two different kinds of schools of thought. There's the tax cuts. We give the rich people all the money, and somehow it'll trickle down, and rivers of gold and honey will flow on us like manna from heaven. There's that fantasy over there. And then there's the other side of, we do need to raise taxes and we do need to raise revenue and invest in it. And there will be a reverberation effect somehow that will do as it's done in the past, give us the things we need, create the jobs we need, and have a reverberation effect through the economy. There seems to be two different thoughts. Which one should we choose?
Yeah, well, that's I'll give a predictable answer, but it's like, look, the way that Mississippi is going, it's going to be downhill for the people of that state, because you're not going to be able to attract business. You're not going to be able to have good lives for the people there if you're going to make these cuts. Now, the one thing I will say about Mississippi is that they started out this legislative session talking about getting rid of the income tax entirely. And that would have been a disaster. Probably a bunch of other southern states would have followed suit. So, it's actually a lot of good work by a lot of good people that kept them to a big tax cut, which I think is a really bad idea, as you say. But I think it's evidence of the fact that, even in Mississippi, they recognize that getting rid of the income tax is not the way to go. But there's a much better approach out there, right? Like what we saw last year with the American Rescue Plan was that we took some resources and put them into the lowest income families, put this child tax credit that everybody, that practically every family got, certainly every working class family, every middle class family, and every low income family. And it actually resulted in a 40% decline in poverty, incredible boost to the income of the lowest income families. We saw a meaningful dent and forward progress at a time when tons of people were out of work, when our economy was really in a shambles. So it's clearly the better way to go, to say, how can we invest in people, invest in communities, use the tax code to address our soaring inequality instead of to make it worse?
Yeah, I mean, there's just so many things that we could do that need to get done, but we're not going to because we've got Joe Manchin.
Yeah, well, that's the unfortunate thing is it was, Saturday evening that I saw that President Biden had proposed this billionaire's minimum income tax. It's a great proposal. I think it would do a huge amount to turn things around. It would be a historic shift. And, I thought for sure they must have vetted it with Senator Manchin, but, I left my office this afternoon walked home so I could get ready and think about what I wanted to talk to you about. Was, came by the time I got home, I was all pumped up about this conversation we were going to have. And then, turned on my computer only to see that Manchin had said he's not going to go for it. Now, look, I think we got to have conversations with the guy, and we got to say to him, look, what is it that you think in your state, which is an incredibly poor state, why is it that you think that letting billionaires continue to not pay taxes on their income when coal miners, when teachers, when nurses, when home health aides, when plumbers pay taxes on their income every year? So I don't know what he's thinking, but it's not what's going to work for the country.
No, and it's short-sighted. This is my problem with all of this stuff. It's tip of the nose stuff. We need to be making these vital investments now. I mean, on the environment side, we need to be making investments to get off of fossil fuels. We need to be doing it 30 years ago. And the longer we wait, the more expensive it's going to be. Infrastructure, we need to be making massive investments. The longer we wait, the more expensive it's going to be. We've got the American Society of Civil Engineers who tell us right now we're $4.6 trillion in the hole. We wait another 3 or 4 years, that number only gets larger. So the longer we wait, the longer we hold out, the longer this takes, the more costly it becomes for our kids and our grandkids. This is not rocket science.
No, and just to take climate change alone, and I'd love to talk about the infrastructure as well. But on climate change, it's just, look, it's only March, and we've already got fires in Colorado this season. We've already got storms in Louisiana. It's not even storm season. It's not even fire season. So we have got to get off of fossil fuels. And not only that, we've just got to make some pretty big investments that could transform our economy and sort of both prepare us for what the hell we're going to do when these storms come and these droughts come and these floods come, but also in the process, create a lot of jobs, right? I mean, IBEW workers could be installing wind turbines, installing solar panels, right? We could have people manufacturing parts for solar panels, parts for wind turbines. I spent 30 years of my life in the Midwest, and workers in those communities could be making the parts for all of this green energy equipment. So it could be a real jobs boon, and we could require that those jobs be unionized. And at the same time, we could be investing in our people and making it better. So I'm 100% with you. Like, it's just crazy for us to continue to just ignore and keep on these blinders. So that billionaires got $1.7 trillion richer during the pandemic. We want to just continue that, right? And not tax that and use it to benefit all of us. It's crazy.
Yeah, Amy, but they work really hard.
Right. Yeah, that's the difference, right? Is that they can sit there and just watch their assets accumulate. And not only do we not tax those assets as they accumulate, right now under current law, they can then pass those assets on at the higher value to their kids without their kids ever lifting a hand. Do you think that's even good for the kids, right? Like, is it good for anyone to inherit that kind of money without anyone ever taxing it? The people who watch the assets grow over the course of their lifetime, they don't have to pay taxes on it if they don't sell it. And then they pass it on to their kids. The kids don't pay taxes on it. The American people never get anything from that incredible growth in assets.
If I were one of the kids, though, I could see the argument. I just didn't win that lottery. But very few of us do.
Here's the thing, Rick. The irony is you could still inherit plenty, even under the most generous plans, or the plans that I would most endorse. You'd still be able to live pretty damn well on what you'd inherit, but we just see a little bit of those resources going back toward all of us.
No, and it's something we absolutely need to do. And look, at the end of the day, you do know that the wealthy of the past did pay much higher inheritance taxes and all of that stuff, and we still had rich people. We just didn't have the kind of unimaginable wealth that we see today. And again,
so private rocket to the moon, right? I mean, that if that doesn't tell you all of it,
It's crazy.
I don't know what does.
So last question I've got for you. In looking at this, when you talk about these budgets and have these conversations, when I saw this, I go, this is dead on arrival. Manchin's never going to go for it. The Republicans are never going to go for it. Why do we go through this if we know that the budget isn't going to get passed? And when do we as voters start demanding that these things that we want, these things that we need, because this stuff is popular, these kind of investments people want, these kind of investments people need, when do you think that finally takes hold?
Yeah, I mean, look, the American people, they want people to be able to get childcare so that parents can go to work. They want kids to be able to afford college. They want us to be investing in our infrastructure. And they want billionaires to be taxed, and they want corporations to pay their fair share. My organization, my colleagues, I know you've talked to Matt Gardner before, found 55 profitable Fortune 500 corporations paid zero in taxes in 2020. Well, the American people don't want that, right? They want to see corporations paying their fair share and the wealthy paying their fair share. So we've just, Joe Manchin himself said it, right? Like you want to, if you don't want me to make every decision, you've got to elect more people who share your priorities. And so I think that's kind of where we have to be, is we've just got to get a mandate, and then we've got to hold people accountable, right? Like, we didn't win the New Deal because Franklin Roosevelt was just a great guy. We won the New Deal because working people and labor unions and people advocating for poor people stood up and said, we want a different kind of economy. This economy, this Great Depression economy, is not working for the rest of us. Well, we've got a similar level of inequality today that we had going into the Depression, and it's not working for most of us, and we all have to stand up and just say that.
And that is exactly it. And I keep asking the question, at what point do we take the kind of angst that's out there and the anger that's out there and direct it in a way that's going to force our elected leaders to do the things that we need to get done? I see all the time, we the people are ticked off, and yes, we are. And yet we keep fighting and eating each other. The hope is eventually we organize and we move in a more positive direction. But Amy, I appreciate the time. As always, excellent stuff. Thank you.
Yeah, always great to talk to you. Thanks so much for having us on.
Good stuff. Amy Hanauer. She is the executive director of the Institute on Taxation and Economic Policy. Check out the amazing work that they do at itep.org, itep.org. We'll get links out on social media how you can take a look at the great work that they do. I'd love to hear your thoughts. 1-866-416-RICK, 1-866-416-7425. If you're just joining us, make sure you grab the podcast. Never miss a moment of the program. Right back after this. Stick around. You're listening to The Rick Smith Show. We're working people. Come to talk. If you're a fan of the show, you've heard our labor history in 2 segments, and you can hear them on the radio pretty much anywhere in the U.S. Labor history has never been more important than it is right now. So here's what we'd like you to do. Tell a teacher. Tell a teacher that labor history is important and that they can get digestible 2-minute lessons that are absolutely free. Free to download, free to use, free to share. Tell a teacher to go to thericksmithshow.com/history and help us put labor back where it belongs, in the classroom. Generations of American workers fought, bled, and died to build the American way of life. It's our job to keep their stories alive. Go tell a teacher that we're here to help them do just that. Find us at thericksmithshow.com/history today.
Welcome back to The Rick Smith Show. Now, here is Rick Smith.
One 866-416-RICK, 1-866-416-7425. You got a thought, question, comment? I want to hear it. Canada, evidently historic moment in Ontario as a deal was struck in Canada's most populous province. They have signed a deal with the federal government that will subsidize child care there because it's something important to the folks there. Evidently, the plan that Justin Trudeau has unfurled will put a $10 a day child care plan into place, $10 a day by 2026. They're going to heavily subsidize it, but out of families' pockets, $10 a day, $50 a week. Because the problem is again, child care for families is one of the biggest expenses that a lot of working families have, because we live in a time where sadly both parents have to work. It's not the 1950s where it's not the Leave It to Beaver era where dad runs off to work and mom gets to stay home because one income no longer supports a family. So they got it done in Canada. We can't get this done here. Under no circumstances could that happen, but it should, because researchers at Barnard College, Columbia University, and the Open Sky Policy Institute, they've been batting around the idea of a $1,000 universal payment for families with low-income families with children. And oddly enough, what they came up with is, as they gamed this out, they said near universal child allowance would cost about $97 billion a year. And what they came up with is that $97 billion investment would have a social benefit of $982 billion a year. Yes, you would have 1,000% return on that investment. And you go, well, how do you figure that? Well, what they did is they took a look at the cost of healthcare, because guess what? If kids get proper nutrition, if they get proper checkups, if they get preventative healthcare and those kind of things, you get less costs for healthcare. One of the biggest savings in all of this, if you do preventative stuff, you treat kids well, they're going to do okay. Healthcare and health insurance premiums go down. Because understand, especially at the lower end, the poor folks, Medicaid, a huge driver of costs. So they looked at that. Also, if you're able to not have to go and do all kinds of other things, crime falls, lightens the load on society. There's a bunch of things that come along with this that they looked at. They looked at the social benefits. Something we don't do. Because, I guess we have different ledgers because we look at it in different worlds. Healthcare, oh my goodness, there's an increase in the use of healthcare. That's somehow on someone's ledger a good thing. But as a matter of taxpayers, especially when you're talking about Medicaid dollars, it's a negative. We don't quite do that stuff anymore. And these folks have taken that moment and thought about it. Now, will we push for the Andrew Yang $1,000 freedom dividend? No, we could never get that through here because we've got the Joe Manchins of the world. We've got people who, they'll just make lazy people, and then they would do nothing but pump out children. You hear this nonsense, even though in the places that have tried this, they found that when you gave people the money, the resources that they need, they use it in the right ways. They use it for shelter. They use it for food. They use it for medicine. They use it for the things that, people need. Because oddly enough, when you need money and you need shelter and you have the resources, oddly enough, and who would have known other than everyone, you spend it where it's needed. Huh. Amazing. Now, if only our policymakers thought like the researchers there at the Columbia and Barnard College and the Open Sky Policy Institute, if only we could get politicians to think about the bigger picture, not putting people in prison, not getting people sick to begin with, all the external things. Boy, wouldn't that be great? Wouldn't that be amazing? What a world that could be. Yeah. I'd love to hear your thoughts. You can email me, rick@thericksmithshow.com. And if you missed any of the program, podcast. Make sure you grab the podcast. Did I mention we've got a podcast? You can download the podcast any place where you get your podcasts. Quick break, right back. Stick around. I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2. On this day in labor history, the year was 1977. That was the day that members of AFSCME Local 1644 began their unsuccessful strike in Atlanta, Georgia. The union was made up of 1,300 mostly black sanitation workers. The city of Atlanta had elected its first black mayor, Maynard Jackson, in 1973. According to historian Manning Marabell, members of the sanitation union had campaigned aggressively to help Jackson become mayor. Many thought he would be sympathetic to the needs of working people in the city. The sanitation workers' hopes were disappointed when they received no raises for 3 consecutive years. Their average income was $7,500 annually. This put the workers below the city's poverty line. Since the Memphis sanitation workers' strike of 1968, AFSCME had emphasized organizing black workers in southern cities. Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. was assassinated while he was in Memphis supporting the strikers. As the nation mourned the death of the civil rights leader, the Memphis strikers had won their first contract. But the sanitation workers in Atlanta would not win their work action. On April 2nd, Mayor Jackson fired the striking workers. He aligned himself with what Manning Marabell has described as Atlanta's corporations, media, and the leaders of the Black Party's bourgeoisie. Some black leaders publicly criticized the workers for striking against the city's first black mayor, accusing them of undermining hard-won black political power. The city's black middle class, by and large, did not support the strike. After a month, the strike was effectively over. Workers returned to their jobs with no improvements in their wages, hours, or conditions. And the hard-learned lesson that what politicians say at election time is not always what they do once they get elected. Like what you hear? Check out laborhistoryin2.com.
Keep On Trucking was an iconic underground cartoon created in 1968 by comic master Robert Crumb. Featuring various big-footed men strutting jauntily through life, the caricature became widely popular as an expression of young people's collective optimism. "You're moving on down the line," Crumb later explained. "It's proletarian, it's populist." But today, the phrase has become ironic, for America's truck drivers themselves are no longer moving on down the line of fairness, justice, and opportunity. What had been a skilled middle-class job in the 1960s is now largely a skilled poverty wage job, thanks to the industry's relentless push for deregulation and deunionization, decoupling drivers from upward mobility. Trucking has been turned into a corporate racket, with CEOs arbitrarily abusing the workers who move their products across town and country. To enable the abuse, corporate lawyers have fabricated a legal dodge, letting shippers claim that their truck drivers are not their employees but independent contractors. Thus, hocus pocus, drivers don't get decent wages, overtime pay, workers' comp, Social Security, health care, rest breaks, reimbursement for truck expenses, including gasoline, tires, repair, and insurance, and, as contractors, drivers are not allowed to unionize. This rank ripoff has become the industry standard, practiced by multi-billion-dollar shipping giants like XPO, FedEx, Penske, and Amazon. This is Jim Hightower saying, of course, corporate bosses try to hide their greed with a thin, legalistic fig leaf. Quote, "We believe our driver classifications are legal," sniffed an XPO executive. Sure they are, sport, since your lobbyists write the laws. But might does not make right. Legal does not mean moral, and boss, spelled backwards, is double S-O-B.
Welcome back to the Rick Smith Show. Now, here is Rick Smith.
So, a new Monmouth poll out today. Finds 77% of Americans endorse the CDC relaxing the face mask and social distancing recommendations. Means more than quarters of us are ready to get back to, well, what was old normal so we can spread and spread and spread. And look, it's over. We're now over. What was it? I saw a thing just earlier today. Over half of the country has had coronavirus. 52% of the country says that they've had it. 57% of Republicans say they've had it. 38% of Democrats. We're going to that point where, we're going to have to muster through until there's an explosion and we're back to the mortuary tractor trailers in the middle of the road. I don't see any way backward, but there you go. Anyway, here to share some thoughts on the top stories of the day. I've asked our good friend, former Ohio Congressman and political analyst Bob Ney to come share some thoughts. Bob, thanks for taking time for us.
Well, thank you, Rick.
So, what do you think? You think there's any way of going backward, or are we maskless and hugging each other again?
Well, sort of maskless in some cases, sort of not. I went to the Wellness Center on Sunday, which is a wellness center that was privately established and was purchased by Wheeling Medical Center, which then was purchased by Morgantown, hospital in West Virginia. And there on let's see, Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, you distance and mask. The rest of the days, you don't. So the virus really only affects Monday, Wednesday, and Friday.
Explain that.
Well, here's what I think it's about. There's cardiac pulmonary rehab at that same facility on Monday, Wednesday, and Friday.
Got it.
So probably it's a great center. Don't get me wrong.
Right, for the vulnerable.
But also it's probably more protection for the center. During this process, you're masking up. So I kind of look at it that way. It's like, but that's just picking out one place. The rest of everything is, basically the masks are gone. There's no spacing, period. Of course. Now, individually, I think people are a little used to, in some cases, don't stand on my heels right behind me when I'm at the counter. But this is gone. There's nothing that is even kind of suggesting caution.
Yeah. No. Well, we went to a concert recently, and it is what it is. We're moving back towards something of like you said. I don't want to be standing on top of people and standing near if I don't have to. But the hope is I'm not going to be running around trying to catch it. But it is where it is. Let's move along to Florida. Evidently, Governor DeSantis has signed the so-called "Don't Say Gay" bill. I guess that's happened.
Right. Of course, there's a lot of controversy to the bill. Also, I think when you read it, if you look at the bill, I should say, nobody really reads bills anymore. But when you look at what is being put out on it, I think there's a lot of misinformation in the sense of it's almost like making DeSantis is almost saying that in kindergarten they're going to have this frank discussion of the sexual issues, but I think the people that are opposed to this are going to talk about the adverse effects to people that are already marginalized, and but it has taken a life of its own, no question about it. And Florida is a great debate.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see what happens and how many places leave over that. Let's move along. Budget. I know you're a big proponent of budgets.
Yes.
The president has unfurled his budget, and it is going to go absolutely nowhere. I don't see that passing. But like I said, budgets are moral documents, shows priorities. The president showed his. You think this has got a chance of going anywhere?
No, it has no chance. But let's give credit here to the fact that the president does a budget. And then let's look at Congress for a second, and this will be a real nice swipe on both parties, okay? There's not going to be a favoritism here on the process, is what I'm talking about. When I was in Congress, we would do budgets, And if you look at the budgets and the appropriation bills, as we did 13 of them through the House, those 13 went to the Senate, and then we did a conference committee on the 13 budgets. And I keep stressing that because that hasn't happened, I want to guess, in 17 years, maybe 17 years. And both parties should do budgets again. They do continuing resolutions, so they don't sound out item by item. I'll give you, a great example. Legal services, right? We would have amendments, and believe it or not, the amendments were defeated to gut legal services. It would continue, but we would have that debate on the floor. What about legal services? And I can go through a wide variety, obviously, of topics. Then it went through this whole process and went to a conference committee, and we decided budgets. They don't do that anymore. I think that in itself, Rick, is a disservice to anybody that's on the left or the right, either side. They should go through the process. So I'm going to give the president credit for doing a budget, and the Congress will simply not do a budget. They will do a continuing resolution, and I don't think that they debate the topics that they should in a wide, variety of manner that they should.
Yeah, I mean, Rick Scott came out with his 11-point plan where he wants to do away with all federal regulations and all federal everything with his idea, so that you have to then go back and refund everything every 5 years. I guess that's his argument, if there is one. And, my thought is, okay, let's say you got rid of everything. We haven't passed a budget, like you said, in 17 years, which means we would fund nothing, which is kind of the point.
Right. I mean, well, Scott's, just not with the process where he should be. Now, I think there are points made in the president's budget that may gain some steam. They may not see light of day, but they're important, which is the 20%, on the taxes. People are doing their taxes right now, and people go out and work hard, and they're paying large sums of money in a sense. If they don't have a home deduction in particular, they will. And then you've got, the rich people of the world, the uber wealthy, that sit and simply have avoided taxes, and corporations that have avoided taxes. I don't think it's fair. So the president's budget at least points out, that direction. Whether we'll go there or not, of course, is to be seen. Doubtful, but, it's worth pointing it out.
Yeah, I'm waiting for my accountant to get back with me with the number. Yeah, it's going to be heartbreaking.
I'm doing the same. In fact, I had an email today that I called and left a message because I sort of didn't understand, what she was saying. And I flipped houses, as you know, and I'm sitting there, and I'm out today. I know you work out in the cold. I know that. A little birdie told me that. Okay, so I know that. And I was out in the cold today and going in and out of these flips. And I know what's coming, I'm going to pay X amount of money, like many, many, many people do in this country. And I know that, some of the uber wealthy are not going to pay any money, any. And it's not right. It's not fair.
No, and look, I don't mind paying my taxes. We use them to fund education and things that we need to, roads and bridges and things we need. But when I look at these folks who have made, billions, there's a problem. Houston, we got a problem, especially when we're running up massive debt when we don't have to, when we could be drawing in revenue and funding these things. And look, this has been decades in the making, and we've created this monster, and it's a problem.
It is, and I hope Congress gets back to the pure, true debate that it should have, item by item, agency by agency. They should get back to doing that, and I think the American people deserve to have that happen.
I'm with you. You're listening to the Rick Smith Show. We're with Bob Ney, former Ohio Congressman, political analyst. You got thought, question, comments? Give us a call, 1-866-416-RICK, 1-866-416-7425. Give us your thoughts. I wanted to get your thoughts on what's going on in Russia. The story that grabbed me over there, evidently no longer concerned about denazification. That evidently isn't part of the the negotiations anymore. I thought that was the reason for the whole invasion in the first place. They had to get rid of the Nazis.
Right. Well, of course, this, everything that has happened, is a lie from the Kremlin. I mean, now they're twisting and moving things in any direction they can, and they'll come up with, something new, or they'll deny that they ever, were trying to take over the Ukraine for a specific reason. I mean, Putin is all over the map. I think hopefully because of the resistance of the Ukrainian people, and I hope continued support of NATO, which of course includes the United States, I hope that Putin figures out that, he really doesn't have a good way out, and that a percentage of people are not buying this in Russia now, as they didn't buy it in Georgia, or they didn't buy it in the Crimea for some of his reasons. So, I mean, who can believe anything that comes out of the Kremlin? I mean, I know we can be suspicious of all governments, but obviously this one is in the mind of one person, Putin. And I think that things that the president said, by the way, were completely justified. I don't think the president needs to apologize or walk back what he said.
No, I don't either.
Because, the president knows, our president knows, he's dealing with somebody that is unstable, and that you can't believe anything that comes out of his mouth. He's devastating people. He's killing them, and maternity wards, and orphanages, and apartment buildings. So who's to believe any of their rationale now as to what they went to the Ukraine for?
Now, all I heard from our outrage machine on the right is, oh, look how weak he is. He walked back, the statement that he made, and it was a gaffe. And I'm going, maybe it was, a mistake. He didn't mean to say it out loud, but he's not wrong. He's got to go.
Well, yes, he's not wrong at all. And then the other thing is that if you read, exactly what the president said, because I looked up the article, tonight, and if you read what the president says, he makes it pretty crystal clear that he is not, sorry for what he said. He said that in one of the articles, but the press has made it. Once he makes a comment, this is the sin of politics in the media. Once you make a comment and somebody puts the mic in your face and says, now, can you really explain this? Once you start to explain it, you have, quote, walked it back.
Yeah.
But if you look at what the president said, he said, I am not, basically apologizing for something I said. There was a gaffe on the troops. That's the one thing he had to clarify. But all the other statements, Putin is a butcher. What's the president supposed to say? He's a nice guy that's having a bad day?
Yeah. No, we got a former president who's saying that kind of stuff. I mean, did you see the rally over the weekend?
He's smart.
Did you see the rally over the weekend?
No, I didn't catch that.
You're lucky. But it was a whole crazy fest down in Georgia.
That was in Georgia? Okay.
Yeah, him and Marjorie Three Names with the tell Pete Buttigieg and her husband and the bikes and the craziness.
Oh, I saw that from her. Where did that fit in to the scheme of anything?
This is what I've realized about a lot of the folks on the right, and I hate to generalize, but I've had conversations with people like this who consume too much right-wing radio, where it just seems to be a lot of slogans and talking points all into into a paragraph without really a cogent thought. So it's just it's like a word salad that doesn't really have a thought associated with it. And somehow by being a frequent listener, they're able to decode all that stuff. And I think that's how those Trump rallies have gone. You have to be in tune with the kind of, word salad decoder ring that they must get to understand how things are going there.
Well, with what she said was so bizarre. She launches into Pete Buttigieg and his husband, and she launches into something that he's never made statements. I mean, it had nothing about, girls' bathrooms, and it had nothing to do with him. It was just a definite, homophobic attack.
Yep.
But at least if you're going to say something at a rally, make it, be semi or somewhat appropriate or coherent to something. And that's not what she did. She just decided to attack him, to throw red meat out there about a guy that's married to a guy. That's what she did.
That's all it was.
Yeah, we know it. But she's so out to lunch.
It was all about going to get the applause line. That's it. And
Right.
look, it was cheap. It was a cheap joke.
Sure.
Speaking of cheap jokes, I got it last line. I gotta get your thought on it. It's
Will
coming.
Smith.
The most important story of the day, evidently. The most important thing of the day.
I'm so torn on this one. First of all, I like Will Smith, Chris Rock. I think they're both in their own respective fields. They're really great. I think the joke by Chris Rock was tasteless, obviously.
I agree.
Part of me says, good for him. Somebody made a comment about my mom one time, an opponent, and I was going to hit him, and my staff was like, sit down, so I didn't. But, with this Will Smith, the bottom line is what Will Smith could have done is to yell what he yelled, by the way, from his seat, or stand up and look at him and point and yell, and that would have been okay. It really would have. But you can't do the physical violence. I think Chris Rock did the right thing of not pressing a charge. Now the two of them need to sit down is what needs to happen. But yeah, you can't do the violence. I mean, I understand how provoked he was, but it would have been better if he just walked up onto the stage and pointed his finger and yelled, yelled the things he yelled, the obscenities. It would have been, I think, would have been okay. But you can't do the hit.
But the Academy is condemning it. How brave
I hope they
are.
don't try to take the Oscar back over it. I mean, look, Chris Rock didn't file a charge.
No. No, but
It'd be
the
better
thing
if the
is, for
Academy
me,
just let
what
the
I
two
took
of
out
them
of it,
shake hands.
because look, I understand. I like you. Someone said something about my wife. I would have met them afterwards. You're going to see me again, and we would have taken this into an alley or something like that. But what for me, the thing is, the privilege that Will Smith has, he got to go back to his seat and got to go home.
Well, yes. Anybody else particularly would have been thrown out.
Yep. And possibly off carted off somewhere else.
Right. Yeah, he just shouldn't have used the violence. If he would have just stood up and yelled, it would have been okay.
There you go.
Yeah.
There you go. So the most important issue of the day we have solved.
Right. Well, it probably beats people. It's more people are talking about that than the budget. How about that?
And that is the problem with our country right there in a nutshell.
Thing. Yes.
There it is. Bob, I appreciate the time, man. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Our good friend Bob Ney. Going to take a quick break. Right back to wrap things up. Stick around. Your thoughts, 1-866-416-RICK, 1-866-416-7425. Still got a minute. Quick break. Back after this. Think tank approved corporate news and commentary? Are you tired of CEOs telling you what to think, who to hate, and who to vote for? Well, welcome to the Rick Smith Show. We don't take orders from some boardroom, and we don't do focus groups or talking points. We don't work for them, and we never will. I'm Rick Smith, and I work for you. Join us daily at thericksmithshow.com and download the podcast and never miss a minute. So I have never heard of Laura Logan. I'm not a current Fox News viewer, but I now have to look up who Laura Logan is. Evidently, she said that The theory of evolution is the result of a wealthy Jewish family paying Charles Darwin to devise an explanation for what gave rise to humanity. What? My first thought is, really, we're going to blame it all on the Jews again? Is this where we're going? And yeah, evidently. And am I surprised? Fox News, the Fox channel? Am I, or Fox Nation? I'm sorry. This isn't even Fox News. This is Fox Nation. Am I surprised? No, actually, no, I'm not. Not even really surprised a little bit. Nor should I be. Speaking of not surprised, evidently, the trucker convoy. Have you been following the big trucker convoy? This has been brilliant. You just amazing. You've got a bunch of people who evidently don't have jobs or don't need income or have no lives, who for 3 weeks have just been driving around D.C., playing in traffic, beeping their horns, wetting themselves. I guess, beating up a kid taking his bike, having their whole convoy upended by a guy who riding a bicycle. Evidently, they have decided that they're leaving D.C. They're calling the D.C. part of it quits after accomplishing absolutely nothing. And evidently, they're driving back to California, which is weird because why? Now, I guess what they're going to do is the plan is they're going to go back and they're going to protest something out there because they're not happy with something out there. Now, understand, they did have some accomplishments. They did meet with Ted Cruz, and they did get to take Ted Cruz for a ride, which I'm sure was, like the highlight of Ted Cruz's day. But no cute picture like the one with Trump. Have you ever seen the picture of Trump in the truck? You got that goofy looking, like he's driving. I didn't see one of those. Ron Johnson, I guess, met with them, the senator from Wisconsin. And I guess a couple of House Republicans also met with them, but they never, I guess, didn't get any Democratic lawmakers to meet with them. And I don't think that I don't even know if they tried, to be honest. But I look at the amount of money wasted. And according to reports, there was about $2 million that was raised, which means a lot of stupid people sent money to these people just to drive around D.C., on the outside of D.C., not actually inside. Drive around the outside, the Beltway, and honk their horns and I guess, cause headaches for people. And there wasn't enough of them from what I understand, to cause any real problems. So they were just, like a sideshow, kind of an attraction, kind of not. And I hate to, my problem is I hate to diminish this, because it was an attempt at organizing that went really, really bad. And I fear this is, I shouldn't say I fear. I think at some point you're going to find out there's a lot of grift in here. Because this attracts the wrong people. Because the trucking industry really needs organizing. It really needs someone who's going to say, look, conditions are terrible, wages aren't great, treatment is bad. There's so many things that needs to happen to make that a living job, a living wage with living conditions again. And these idiots weren't it. These idiots were, idiots. But good luck going back to California. Hope you don't get lost. Hope you find your way back to California. That's the best I can hope for. Anyway, if you missed any of today's program, make sure you download the podcast. Maybe you've heard, but we have a podcast, and you can download it. You can share it with your friends, coworkers, neighbors. Always there. iTunes, the iHeart, everywhere you can get a podcast, it is there. Also, love to hear your thoughts. You can email me, rick@thericksmithshow.com. Thanks so much for being here. We'll see you back here next time.
You've been listening to The Rick Smith Show. Email Rick at rick@thericksmithshow.com. Until next time, this has been The Rick Smith Show, where working people come to talk.